The match between Hans Niemann and Levon Aronian has reached a very exciting phase here. Their first two classical games, or you can say the first two long format games where they played 30 minutes plus 15 seconds increment, ended in draws. In game 1, Levon was winning it, but then Hans made a comeback and he was so tenacious, so resistant overall, and very resourceful. This is what Hans Niemann is really good at. So now, with those two games ending in draws, we go into the blitz section. And the blitz section is 5 minutes plus 2 seconds increment, which is hardly any time to play a freestyle chess position, but the players will try to attempt it. I will try to attempt to make you understand what the position is by taking 60 seconds and explaining to you what could be the potential plans in the position. So let's have a look. So this is the position here. The queen is in the corner of the board. Then we have the bishops, the rook, king, knights and rook. As you can see, if the two knights come out, you can already long castle here with king going to c1 and rook to d1. So that's one feature in the position. Secondly, generally you want the queens and bishops to be developed quickly. So g4 with the idea of getting the queen out looks very logical. Also, you can go f4 opening up this bishop, or even e4 opening up the bishop here. There is also the possibilities to play a4, a5, a6. And by the way, these plans are not just for the white side that I mentioned. You could mirror it, and these similar plans can also work for black. So with this in mind, let's have a look at how the game went and what were the ideas that Hans Niemann and Levon Aronian used in their game. Okay, Hans opens the game with pawn to e4. He opens up the bishop here, and Levon takes his time and tries to figure out how he should play in this position, and he goes pawn to g6. Now you can see this move, he's instantly attacked the pawn on b2, so Hans Niemann can defend it with knight to c3. He goes knight c3. There was also possibility to push e5 forward to block the queen, but knight c3 makes a lot of sense. And now pawn to e5 played, and let's see what Hans does next. He goes here in the spirit of the king's gambit with pawn to f4, an excellent move. After takes, you go pawn to d4. So take here and knight e2 first, attacking the pawn on f4. Let's see what Levon does here. Early on in the game, Hans has put a lot of pressure on Levon here. And bishop h6, the bishop develops, defending the pawn here, also putting pressure on the diagonal. And now white plays pawn to g3. If you take here, I'm going to take back and I'll attack the bishop. He does it, takes, h takes g3, and he comes back with his bishop here on the diagonal. And now can we just expand in the center with d4? That's exactly what Hans does. Excellent move. Pawn to d4 played by Hans Niemann. And now Levon is under pressure for sure. He goes knight c6. He's attacking the central pawn, but long castle. The other knight comes out to b6. And we have bishop to h3, attacking this pawn on d7. Black castles. And you go pawn to d5, attacking the knight in the center, and knight to a5 played by Levon. He wants to bring the knight to c4. You have queen coming up to f3. And suddenly the position has changed colors. Where exactly did Hans Niemann go wrong? I believe it was the pawn push forward here. Pawn to d5. Until then his position looked good, but now e takes f5. He takes g takes and takes on f5, and rook king quickly moved to b8 by Levon. But look at the times now. Both players down to a minute on the clock. Like Hans has a minute, Levon down to 16 seconds. The knights are now limited here, but look at this bishop and queen battery. He goes knight c8. And he wants to get the knight to d6. That's the idea. But Hans sacrifices the pawn and you just take it. But he doesn't. He goes c6. Levon wasn't happy with perhaps this exchange sacrifice coming in. Knight to e4, b6 played, the king moves to b1 and the bishop enters in. Knight to f4, he takes off the knight. And now rook takes e4. Rook takes rook. And Hans goes queen takes e4, knight b7. Now the h7 pawn is hanging, but so is the d6 pawn. a4 played. He takes on d6, queen d3, bishop e5, chops it off, knight to c5 and queen g6, bishop a1. Look at the speed at which they are playing. It's just insane. Takes on d4, rook d4. I have never seen such speed in blitz chess. We need to do a kind of action replay here to understand all that was happening. Knight takes b3, rook b4. He takes another pawn, knight to e6, and look at Levon there. He's feeling the flow here. Rook e8. Knight check, king a8. There's no mate here. He takes on d7. But now queen to f5. And king c1 with hardly any time on the clock. Knight jumps to c4. He has to take it, otherwise he would have gotten mated. Queen d5. He takes, knight takes, rook g8 and resigns there. Levon Aronian beats Hans Niemann. The speed at which they played in this game was just incredible. Now Hans Niemann has to win on demand with the black pieces in order to equalize the score. Let's have a look at how this transpired. So the position was roundabout even at this point, and Hans over here played his pawn to a4. Levon took the pawn, queen d3, bishop came up, and now when he took here, this was a big blunder by Levon. Hans could have actually gotten a great advantage if he had taken here. Pawn takes, and now this very nice move, knight c6. The point here is that I'm going to take here and take on d6. So you must take the bishop, and then after knight e5, queen d3, rook d3, d6 is hanging, knight c6 and knight d7 both under pressure. White is winning. But instead Hans, who had like 5 seconds on the clock, went queen g6, and now Levon could have been winning with the move knight ce4 when everything is protected and he's doing very well. But he went bishop a1, threatening a checkmate here on b2, and c3 was somehow the best move. It's very, very tricky because after queen takes c3, you have check, king b7 just like in the game, but you have queen d2 to prevent mate. So c3 really helps in that regard. But actually he played queen d6. And now once again c3 was an important move with the idea of queen takes c3 and queen d2. Because even with c3, if queen h7, there is king a1. But he played bd4 and he allowed this queen h7. And now the position is even. But this knight b3 was a very strong move as this pawn is pinned. And Levon found this with just seconds on the clock. Hans should have played knight e6 here. But instead he went rook b4 and gave up a few pawns. And from this point onwards, Levon was quite clinical by converting this into a win. And we have now Levon Aronian coming back. Hans Niemann in a must-win game with the black pieces. Look at his focus and concentration. This means a lot to him. He will then be able to move to the semi-finals to play Vincent Keimer if he manages to win this match. But right now, his back is against the wall. Levon Aronian somehow in freestyle chess has been so good this year. Like at the start, maybe in Weissenhaus and Paris, it took him some time to get warmed up, but then winning the Las Vegas event and now coming here and actually showing the world that he is one of the best freestyle chess players, one of the best chess 960 players on the planet. Hans Niemann also very good at this format, so he'll be trying to get back the point and force an Armageddon. Let's have a look at the position with 60 seconds that we can figure out what's going on. So there's a rook here on a1 and a rook on h1, and rest of the pieces are all scrambled up. So a4, a5 often, then h4, h5 is also possible. Generally f4 move makes a lot of sense, opening up the queen and the bishop. There's e4 here as well. There's d4, pawn to c4 also seems possible. So all these moves are possible here, but one has to kind of understand where the knights would go to. Also here, if the king would castle short or even go castle long with all the pieces coming out, this will be a very interesting position to look at. Let's get back to the game. Levon opens the game with pawn to e4, opening up his bishop here. Pawn to e5 by Hans. Pawn to f3. The queen comes out. And what is Hans going to play next? Well, he brings his knight to e6, eyeing the d4 and the f4 squares. And Levon Aronian now goes knight to b3. He brings his knight to the b3 square. He's looking at these two squares here. Knight to b6. The black knight is well placed on b6. Pawn to a4. Trying to get a5, a6. We spoke about these possibilities. Pawn to d6. But this actually gives Levon a big edge now. a5 pushes forward. Maybe this move d6 wasn't great. He should have played his pawn to a5, but maybe he was afraid that it could become a weakness. Knight goes back to d7, and now Levon can even push his pawn further down. He goes d4, f6 very quickly played, and now Levon Aronian can push his pawn right into the heart of the position and play d5, gaining even more space. And he does it. Pawn to d5. Hans is in big trouble now. He jumps knight c5, offering a trade. You can take on c5. You can even decline the trade, but he takes. Knight takes, and now knight comes out to e3. The idea now is to play b4, c4, oof. And a6 played by Hans. Just trying to limit that a pawn from moving ahead. Pawn to b4, knight goes back, c4. And while this is happening, Hans has a few more seconds on the clock than Levon. g6 played because Hans recognizes his counterplay is with the f pawn moving. Bishop to c2. Levon being very prophylactic, stopping those ideas. Bishop e7. As long as Hans can hang in there with equal material, he can get his chances. Bishop goes to d2, h5 played. And now h4, the bishop comes to f8. His point is he wants to put his bishop on h6. Queen f2 played here by Levon. And queen f7. While white has like huge space, black is playing within the confines of his position. Queen e7. But he's keeping the edge on the clock. Hans is very smart. Knight to d1. And now bishop f7. played. He brings his knight to c3 square. And now bishop to g7. Doesn't trade it with bishop h6. He wants to keep pieces on the board so that later Levon can get confused. Oh, he castles. Castles short. Just when it felt like the king was coming under pressure, he goes the other side. But Levon also puts pressure on the other side. Incredible chess. What a game this is turning out to be. King h7. And now just take on h5. Or even just go to the g file. He takes. And now rook g1 or pawn to c5. Yes, he goes rook g1. Rook g8 played. And rook to c3. Levon is trying for the c5 breakthrough. Hans needs his own counterplay. But from where? Well, he's bringing his knight in. Knight e8. The knight could jump to g6 to h4. Pushes the pawn to c5. Knight g6 played. Ooh, the tension is mounting. Takes. Knight to b6 attacking the rook. Levon has 1 minute. Hans has 2 minutes on the clock. He moves his rook where but? Rook f8. Levon has a decisive advantage. But this advantage is something that computers can easily convert. What about a human being? By the way, a great idea by Levon to come here to f5. Hans goes bishop h6, offering to trade the bishop so that his knight gets the f4 square. Rook c1 played. Levon has 48 seconds. 1 minute 38 seconds for Hans. Takes on d2. Queen d2. And f5 played now. Oh, he's looking here at the h4 square. Jumps in with the bishop. Oof. Bishop to d7, attacking the f5 pawn. And Hans Niemann takes the pawn on e4. Fe and knight h4. Controlling the f5 square. Rook c7, another beautiful move played. The queen has to move. Queen f6, but now bishop e6. Taking advantage of this. No, he takes on b7 and this gives black a chance. He goes rook g2, which is also a very interesting move. So queen e3 is kind of the only move. He goes queen to c3 and now queen f2, trying to checkmate here on the second rank. Will Hans find it? He has 1 minute on the clock. Levon has 28 seconds. He goes bishop g6. What a dangerous move. But has he missed bishop h3 check and picking this up? No. Bishop f5, rook f7 played by Hans. This was a mistake by Levon. And Hans is back again. This is what happens in a 5-minute game in freestyle chess. You can't be accurate. And now king takes g6. Very important move. So that after rook takes rook, queen takes rook, there is no queen trade. That's happening after queen c7. Levon has 19 seconds. He can calm down a bit here and calculate here. Queen c7 is what I was thinking is the best move. Levon goes queen c8 and it's a mistake. Queen f3 is game over, but you have to calculate what happens to queen e6 or queen g8. He goes knight f3. He doesn't play queen f3, doesn't find it. And now queen e6 check. Levon gets in the trade. Very important trade for him. And Hans Niemann, who has to win here. Oh, that's a big ask now. I mean, he's going to trade on e6. Levon has 5 seconds only. If he takes, yes, he takes. Pawn takes. And knight d2 check, finds it. King comes up. King f6. Still fighting. Fighting position, it's equal. King takes pawn. You take it. King takes pawn. No, he goes h4. He misses it. He makes a mistake because rook h1 is a very strong move. Finds it. And if knight f3, there is rook f1. Don't play it, Hans. Oh, he goes for it. He blunders rook f1, pins it. Rook g3 and now king e2. He loses the knight and the game. Hans Niemann. He's so upset there. And he resigns. Respectfully there. Levon Aronian wins it and makes it through to the semi-finals. What a match this was.